Hi everybody, welcome to the show. Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Amanda. This is Raising A to Z. It is a YouTube channel all about homeschooling, and today we're talking about technology. Technology and screen time. Is technology and screen time good for homeschooling? Is it bad for homeschooling? Let's talk about it, because it seems like there's really two camps of thought. There are either the homeschool parents who are very against screen time. They want to have as little screen time as possible. They want their kids to do all of their work with paper and pencil. And then you have on the other camp, you have the parents who are all about screen time, all about technology, and they talk about their kids, playing Minecraft for 6 or 7 hours a day. There seems to be like these two very distinctive camps, and they both tend to be quite vocal. But really, where should technology fall in terms of homeschooling? Like, as a homeschooler, is it one or the other, or is there some kind of middle ground? So we're going to talk about that. But before we do that, why don't you take a second to subscribe and click the bell to get notifications when we put out a new video, which is every Monday morning. I think there's pros and cons to both camps, and I think it's not so much a black and white issue, it's more of a gray issue, and it's something that as homeschoolers we need to think about, not only for our own family and for our educational values, but also for each of our individual children. Some kids are going to be able to handle more screen time than others. Some kids are better able to regulate themselves than others. And I think those are things that we need to remember when we're talking about screen time and technology. Like, there's pros and cons to it, and how and where you fall on that kind of spectrum of how much technology and screen time is going to be used in your household is going to depend so much on your family, but also on your individual children. For example, in our family, Zoe will sit in front of the iPad and watch Paw Patrols for hours and hours and hours on end. She is younger, but also like really loves stories and loves being told stories and loves to just watch stories again and again and again. Alexi is a little bit older, yes, but she does have a little bit more ability to self-regulate in that sense, where she loves to, like, she'll watch her shows in the morning after while they're having breakfast or whatever. But as soon as kind of breakfast is done, within like 10 or 15 minutes of her being done eating, she is like up. She wants to go and draw. She wants to go and play. She's getting dressed. She's trying to convince me to go outside, even though it's like 8 o'clock in the morning and I'm barely awake. But they're just two very different kids. And so sometimes we have to approach technology a little bit differently for both of them. But like I said, there are also pros and cons to technology. So let's talk about some of the cons. Let's just get the cons. I like to get the bad stuff out of the way first. So let's do the cons. What are some of the cons to screen time and technology? So number one, it can be addictive. It can be very addictive to have your kids in front of a screen or play video games or things like that all the time. And one of the reasons is because they are getting instantaneous emotional feedback and gratification. So some kids can get addicted because they are getting, especially with video games, that's why kids tend to really get into the video game zone, is because they are getting emotional feedback. And that emotional feedback it's a hit of dopamine, basically, right? And so they can become addicted to screen time, and that can be very difficult for some families, and some kids in particular, to be able to regulate themselves. We've already talked about that, right? So it can be addictive, and that is something that you need to consider for your kids. So outside of like your kids doing school at home because they are in the public system, you do have some parents who choose to have certain programs teach their kids online. Khan Academy is a really popular one, Beast Academy, Math Prodigy. These are different kind of, especially math. Math is really big to learn online. Different companies or programs that you can sign up for and that your kids can basically learn online. There's a teacher, there's a program, instead of doing like a workbook. Some people really love them. One of the cons that I do see is that sometimes, because a lot of these programs are game-based, there's a little bit of understanding that's missed in the fundamentals of how that math concept actually works. Not always, but because it's game-based, sometimes they're just kind of getting the game. They're not necessarily understanding the concept or how it works. That can be a con, especially if your kids if that concept is something that's going to be built on later on, it's a really easy fix. Just have a little pencil and paper time every now and then. It's, sit down and work through it and see if your kids can do that adding with carrying, or subtraction with borrowing, or whatever the concept is on paper. Like, every couple of days or once a week or whatever, just so that you know for sure that they are actually learning the concept and it's not just playing the game. Just a little tip, but that could be a downside, is if you have these programs that are online and that is all you're doing is you're just letting the computer teach them, they might miss some things, right? Because computer is only as smart as the person who programmed it. And being honest, kids are usually smarter than computers. And then one of the other things is that one of the biggest cons to technology and screen time is the dangers of social media, misinformation, online bullying. Like, being online can be a very dangerous and very scary place for kids. And so we have to look at how those things are going to impact our kids. Social media, we talk about, it's proven that being on social media for hours and hours a day can be very detrimental to your mental and emotional health and your self-esteem. Like, that is a proven fact. We are talking about how there are so many things that kids can see on the internet that are not for their eyes. So much misinformation out there that can get them into, like, kids get into really weird rabbit holes that are just not good things to be in. And so we do have to say, like, it is dangerous. It is something that we need to pay attention to what our kids are doing online, and that we're not just giving them an iPad and walking away and letting them just search the internet for hours and hours on their own. Like, I think that's something that we need to be cognizant of when it comes to technology and when it comes to screen time. But there are some really great things about technology. I think technology has really opened up and made education so much more accessible, made it so much more fair, and it is single-handedly one of the greatest things that we have ever come up with when it comes to having the ability to access information and access education and learn. One of my favorite things online has made learning so much more fun. We have so much better access to documentaries, we have better access to little informational videos, we have better access to interesting articles and games that are built to help kids learn different concepts. We have so much more ways to make learning fun. Like, I remember being in elementary school and we got excited when it was movie day and the teacher had to, like, rent the Magic School Bus VHS from the board office, and then she had to wait 2 weeks for it to be shipped to our school and then we could watch it. Now I just turn on my iPad and it's on Netflix. Like, it's so quick and I can watch it all the seasons. And the kids I can find different ones that fit what our topics are for our unit studies. Like, we have so much access to information that it is incredible, and it's often so easy to find it in really kid accessible, kid digestible types of content, which is fantastic, right? Because I can tell you, I remember more about Magic School Bus and more about science from the Magic School Bus than I ever did from science class. It was just more accessible and more interesting to me, and I remember those facts. Technology opens up new worlds. You can actually, like, take a safari. You can go and, like, tour museums. You can go and, like, do so many different things just from sitting in your house. Like, you don't have to go and spend $5,000 to go to, Dominican and to go snorkeling with sharks. You can actually, like, watch documentaries and learn about those things. And that is a great kind of, like, leveling the playing field. People can learn about things even without having to go and experience them. I think that's fantastic. Sorry, Google is, like, one of the greatest creations ever. Like, let's talk about Google. Google is phenomenal. I can ask Google a question, it gives me an answer. I can type things in and, like, look up stuff, it gives me an answer. At this point, I can take a picture of a flower outside and it will help me identify what that flower is with the photo function. That's pretty incredible. Like, when we're doing our unit studies and doing plants identification outside, because we're just talking about plants and seeds, that's amazing that I can take a picture and figure out what this is without ever having to open a field guide, without ever having to borrow it from the library. Like, that is an amazing thing. Another great, amazing pro to technology and screen time, assistive technology. There are so many amazing assistive technologies out there that help students who have various learning disabilities or learning difficulties, that help level the playing field for them. And I think we need to embrace those things. We don't need to push them around and say, like, oh, well, I don't want you using that because I don't like screen time. They're fantastic. Like, I had a student back when I was teaching years and years ago. And I worked at a private school, and it was very much like an old-fashioned type of education. They're very big into, like, rote learning and pencil and paper, and that was it. And we had this one student, we'll call him X, and X was severely learning disabled. He had multiple learning disabilities. He had already failed his grade, so it was a private school, he was able to do that. He had already failed his grade and he was well on his way to failing his grade a second time. And so the teacher he had was the same teacher he had had the year before. And the school and this teacher in particular were very against technology in the classroom, and so much so that they were against calculators. Like, he was not allowed to use a calculator. And so some of us newer teachers had come in, and one of the things that we had pushed for was that X should be allowed to use a calculator. And the teacher was adamant, and I said, listen, I said, you're telling us he's failing his test because he can't finish his test. So every time that he had a math test, which they had once a week, that was a major part of their final grade, he never ever finished it. He never got close to finishing it, because by the time his reading disability kicked in and he had to read all the math questions, by the time his numeracy learning disability was there and he had difficulty identifying numbers and stuff like that, by the time you put in, and then he had difficulty with writing, by the time you put in all of his different learning disabilities, it just took him so long to complete even a single question. He just never was able to get the test done. Even with some extra time, he just was never able to finish the test. I said, why don't you give him a calculator, have him do 1 or 2 questions kind of the long way to show that he understands the learning behind it, but then give him a calculator and let him work through the other questions. There are a lot of word problems. He still has to figure out what number to punch into the calculator. It helps level the playing field. And she says, nope. That poor teacher fought us for so long, and finally she gave in. We finally convinced her. It took us about 4 or 5 months. She finally gave in, and she was amazed that with a calculator, he was now able to pass his test. He still and even with a calculator, he wasn't able to finish his test, but he was now getting to 95% completing the test, and most of his answers were correct. It wasn't that he was dumb. It's just he needed something to help level the playing field for him, and being able to do some of the math with a calculator instead of having to solve it all longhand really made his life so much easier. And I always laugh because her argument against it was that you weren't going to have a calculator growing up. You're not always going to have a calculator in your back pocket. You need to learn how to do these things. But the world has changed. Times have changed. And now pretty much every single person I know over the age of let's say 16 has some kind of phone, has some kind of smartphone, and is literally walking around with a calculator in their back pocket. Pretty much every single phone out there has a calculator. So literally this argument of let's learn it the old-fashioned way. Yes, let's learn it, but let's not make it so that that's the only way that we can solve it. Let's allow technology to move us forward and to make things easier and faster for us. That's the benefit of technology. That's why people have invented things for hundreds of thousands of years, is because technology makes our lives easier, it makes it better, it makes it faster. So where do we stand on this whole technology screen time thing? We stand kind of firmly in the middle, and we tend to prescribe to the idea that screen time is something that should be limited. It doesn't need to be an all day sit in front of the TV, sit in front of an iPad, sit in front of a screen kind of activity, but it also needs to be something that we teach. And so basically in our household, how it goes is we have specific times in the day where our kids have access to watch, their favorite TV shows, watch a lot of Paw Patrol, we watch a lot of Storybots and Magic School Bus and Peppa Pig, and that's great. We love that. They have their times. When the time is over, that's it. There's no more screen time. Unless they ask us for something specific. So if they want to use the iPad to look up a video on how something works, yes, we will help you do that. So if they want to use the iPad and a specific program to make a stop motion video, yes, we will help you do that. And yes, you can do that. If they want to play a game on the iPad, oftentimes we'll say yes. We try to save iPad time games and stuff for days when it's rainy or not nice out. But oftentimes, if they ask, we'll give them a little bit of time and let them play those games. We want to teach our kids to use technology in a way that is going to be helpful, that is going to be safe, and that's going to benefit them. And so we have the rule that as long as it is going to be educational, it's going to be creative, and it's going to be done safely, we will give you iPad time or whatever screen time is needed to help you finish a specific goal. You just have to tell us specifically what that goal is. And we have no problem. Alexi makes stop motion videos all the time. She loves to make stop motion videos, and she uses a digital camera with a screen and a video game, or she uses the iPad to do that. If you ever follow us on Instagram or Facebook, you know that our kids absolutely love playing Osmo. We love playing with our Osmo. It is a fantastic toy. Our kids have learned so much from playing with it, and it's also a great way for them to practice a lot of different skills. It's great. We don't have a problem with them playing certain things at certain times. If they want to have just a veg time, that's for when they have their specific times of the day. But outside of that, they've got to give us a purpose. Stefan is also a teacher. He's a high school teacher, and he and I have this discussion often because he's so many teachers out there who are like, oh, no phones in the classroom, put it in a bucket, put it in a bin, put it away. I don't want to ever see it. But Stefan goes, here's the difference. Kids need to be able to see that their phone can ring and the adult doesn't pick it up. Because it's not an appropriate time to be on their phone or on social media or whatever. And there are so many things that we can do with technology. We need to teach them how to do it appropriately. So Stefan, in his class even, he likes to use cell phones for his students to record or to take photos or to do editing or take notes. Like they use their phones, but in a safe and educational way. And that is how we're going to move forward with using technology in our home, is that we want it to be safe. We need to know what you're doing. We need to have access to how you're doing those things, but we're more than happy to allow that to continue, that they have access to technology to help them live in the world that we live in, because our world is heavily technologically based. And to say no screen time, I think, is really unrealistic, because we live in a world where knowing how to use computers, iPads, screen time is important. Knowing how to do it safely is important. And knowing how to self-regulate yourself with the use of these technologies is also important. So that's where we stand on screen time. I think it's, like I said, it's not a black and white issue. It's somewhere in the gray zone, and it's going to matter so much depending on your family. I don't think technology is a bad thing. I just think we need to teach our kids how to use it safely, effectively, and for good outcomes and purposes. That's what I got for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and others, make sure to subscribe and click the bell, because you can learn things from technology too. If you are on social media, which we are, and we like to prescribe to a safe type of platform, we have Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, where we put up all kinds of really great educational and safe and fun content for parents who want to learn more about homeschooling. So thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a great week. We'll see you next time.